Hello and welcome to another episode of India and Global Left. If you are new to the show, please hit that subscribe button. Also consider becoming a YouTube member, a Patreon, or donate small amount given in the link in the description box. Without further ado, let me welcome our guest tonight, Professor Mohammad Marandi. Professor Marandi teaches at University of Tehran in Iran. Professor Marandi, welcome back to India and Global Left.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's always a pleasure being on your show.
I wanted to start with the latest news today. That is Yemen joining the war against United States and Israel. If you could tell us the significance of this moment.
It is very important because Yemen can block the Red Sea at will, and that would be catastrophic for Saudi oil exports that go through the Red Sea. The super tankers cannot go through the Suez Canal. And if, for example, the Red Sea is blocked, that would decrease oil exports. And if they decide to strike Saudi assets, then even the smaller ships cannot take oil and go through the Suez Canal. So that is one thing that they can do. They can fire missiles, of course, at the Israeli regime, which they have already done. And the regime already has a huge shortage of missile defense capabilities. And obviously, Ansarullah, the Yemeni armed forces, they've been preparing themselves since the 7 week crisis focus on Iran in the Red Sea. And powerful. There's talk that they may go into Kuwait at some point. And Ansarullah can also go into Saudi Arabia. There are three provinces in Saudi Arabia that the people of Yemen believe to be their own. So we're in very extraordinary times. But of course, the resistance, the axis of resistance in Iran, they didn't want this war, and they are not going to go all the way up the escalation ladder overnight. There's a lot more than that Iran can do, that the resistance in Iraq can do, that the resistance in Yemen can do. Of course, Hezbollah is hitting the Israeli regime very hard and effectively, which undermines that whole argument that was being made for well over a year now that Hezbollah has been destroyed. Hezbollah is hitting the Israelis very hard and very effectively. They are the true heroes in this whole story because they made so many sacrifices for the Palestinian people in Gaza to draw away the armed forces of the Israeli regime and made huge, huge sacrifices. Their families, their children slaughtered, journalists, innocent people slaughtered by the regime. Apartment block after apartment block destroyed, Western media pretending that these are Hezbollah strongholds to justify the slaughter. They did all this to help spare the children of Gaza. They are the true heroes, alongside, of course, the rest of the axis of resistance. But they, being right beside the Israeli regime, face massive destruction. So the people of Lebanon, the supporters of the resistance, history will remember the role that they played, and people across the world should look at them as role models in every way imaginable. But by expanding the war and making it a regional war, the Americans have only made things worse for themselves. And it is believed that an escalation by Trump is imminent, that there will be strikes on Iran, meaning a campaign to take islands or the territory or the shores in the south of Iran, and maybe attacks deep inside Iran with special forces. But escalation means that the Iranians will escalate. And the Iranians can easily destroy the oil and gas facilities on the other side of the Persian Gulf. And Iran's allies in Iraq and Yemen can escalate. So the Americans are making a catastrophic situation even more catastrophic. And the reason is the Zionists want it. Trump wants a way out. He's seeking an off-ramp, but the Zionists, Netanyahu, the Israeli regime, they won't permit him to do so.
I'll come to some of the things you said, but I just wanted to start with the second important news of the day, which is Zelensky, after having dragged Ukraine into this war, provoking Russia into launching a special military operation and causing a catastrophe for Ukrainians, most of all, is now touring the Gulf states. And there are media reports, we don't know the exact details, but one with Saudi Arabia, one with Qatar, and there is another coming with the Emiratis. So, they're talking about a decade long agreement that covers a whole range of issues, including defense. And the top news is that they would be helping them, Ukraine would be helping the Gulf states shoot Shahid drones, because apparently they have had experience of that in Ukraine. Analysts are saying that that might be because Ukraine is scared that the third and the other intercepting missile system is now being diverted to West Asia. What's your reading of that news?
Well, the very fact that he's traveled to these countries is obviously not going to make the Russians happy, and it's not going to make them happy with these countries either. If he is, so successful, then why is he losing the war against the Russians? I don't think Ukraine under Zelensky will be around much longer, if Ukraine itself exists much longer. But I don't think with him as president or leader, uh, it's going to we're not going to see that last. And these regimes may not last either. The way things are going, if they are all completely dependent on oil and gas, and the Emirates, which has made itself a center of global commerce, is never going to be seen as a safe place in future again. So we're not going to go back to the past. That era is over. And these regimes, if they do survive, the coming weeks and months, if they do survive, and if people don't take over, uh, they will have to deal with a new reality, and that is that they will have to compensate Iran for all the damage that they've done. And Iran will no longer allow them to be platforms for aggression. That era is over. Iran has forgiven them for many, many, many atrocities. When the West pushed Saddam to invade Iran in 1980 and gave him chemical weapons, they funded the war. They gave Saddam hundreds of billions of dollars back then. And then Iran forgave them after the war. After that, they supported ISIS and Al Qaeda in Syria and Iraq, especially Qatar, of course, with Turkey and Jordan and all of them. But Qatar funded it more than other regimes in the Persian Gulf. And it was from Qatar that the American drones flew to murder General Soleimani. And then, of course, during the 12-day war, US bases were used against Iran, the radar systems, and the genocide in Yemen, the Saudi and Emirati genocide in Yemen. They used US bases in the region to attack them, to invade Iraq, to carry out the dirty war in Syria. That era is over. Iran will not allow that anymore. So if these family dictatorships survive, and it's not clear that they will, because if the war expands and these key assets are destroyed, the oil and gas installations, then there's nothing left. They're not like Iran, or they're not like Russia, or they're not like China or Brazil. They're completely dependent on two or three things. Maybe one thing, and in a couple of cases, two things, like oil or gas, or oil and commerce. So they're not in a position of power anymore. The smart thing for them to do would be to tell the Americans to get out and try to restore relations with Iran and pay compensation. That would end the war very swiftly. But as things stand, despite the fact that Trump told Mohammed bin Salman to that he will have to, that he, to kiss his backside, and despite all that humiliation, these regimes, for the time being, I think, instead of taking the right course, they will continue to kiss Trump where he tells them to kiss.
You mentioned that Russia won't be happy about this. I'm just wondering if Iran would be happy about this, given Russia, let's say, has a decent relationship with the Gulf states. Of course, it has very good relationship with Iran, but Russia, as they are, they don't have this polarizing mindset. But if this continues, Russia might tilt one way more. Would Iran be happier, ironically?
Yes, I think that Russian anger towards uh, Zelensky and their dislike for the and contempt for the Zelensky regime and his moves in the Persian Gulf region will have an impact because obviously he's there to make a lot of money, possibly part of it for himself and his cronies, and part of it to continue the war with Russia. So I don't think it's good. It's going to be a good deal for these countries in the Persian Gulf. Not that Russia is going to bomb them or break off relations, but it will probably contribute to extra effort by the Russians to make sure that Zelensky has no success anywhere. But in any case, the important this is not really a key point. There's nothing much that any of these Arab family dictatorships in the Persian Gulf can do. They're not powerful forces. The Emirates has 1,200,000, 300,000 passport holders, citizens. Qatar has 350,000. You know, Kuwait, the Bahrain, these are tiny countries. The only Saudi Arabia is bigger, and we saw that after having the full support of the entire Western world and the region, including Turkey, in their genocidal war against Ansarullah in Yemen for 7 years, they failed. So Saudi Arabia being so vulnerable, all of the assets of these countries are alongside the shores of the Persian Gulf. They're completely vulnerable to any Iranian strike. So they're not really in a position of power. So if they escalate, they can easily be hurt very badly and ultimately destroyed. So I don't think Iran takes that as a very uh, important shift. The real force in the Persian Gulf in this war is the United States. And Iran is at war with the United States. The United States carried out this aggression. They continue to escalate, and Iran is responding. The rest of them are there just the real reason why Iran, the real impact of Saudi Arabia and these other countries is the fact that they're allowing the Americans to do what they want on their territory.
I had Ambassador Chas Freeman recently, and among other things, he said that um after many years, perhaps centuries, the Persian region has been able to regain its control over the Strait of Hormuz and indirectly over the Indian Ocean. It was the beginning, we are going back maybe 500 years ago, the beginning of the Portuguese intervention in the region, followed by Dutch, British, etc. But up until 1736, the Safavid Empire held on. But then began the phase of the breakdown of the powerful states there. And he said that of course, after 1946, 1947, Mohammad Musaddiq started to or he thought about having an independent Persian Gulf. What is your response to Chas Freeman's point that Iran, after many years, has been able to take full control of the Persian Gulf, and that would have a tremendous impact in the long term on the global stage?
Well, obviously, Iran is in control of the Persian Gulf as we speak. And despite all their attempts, Americans can't do anything about it. And they may attack Iran tonight, and they may attack Iran's islands, and they may attack Iran's shores or carry out attacks deep inside Iran. But they will fail. So they will not be able to open the Persian Gulf to oil and gas trade. And I think time will tell. But Iran wasn't planning this. If these Arab regimes, which I explained their 47-year history with Iran after the revolution and how they supported Saddam and how they supported ISIS and Al Qaeda at the behest of the United States and the West, and murdered Iranians and helped them with the 12-day war and helped murder General Soleimani, the Iranians could have it was business as usual until a month ago. So they brought it upon themselves. And now the reason why Iran is saying that they're going to control the Strait of Hormuz is because they want reparations from these regimes and because they want to make sure that in future these regimes are not platforms for aggression against Iran. Otherwise, Iran has forgiven a lot of what they've done so far. When Qatar, which has done so much to destroy our region through their support of Al Qaeda and Daesh and other groups, remember, the official religion or ideology in Qatar is the ideology of Wahhabism. They follow Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. Their main mosque in Doha, a huge mosque, is the Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab Mosque. They and the Saudis are the only two countries in the world that claim Mohammed bin Salman as their official ideology. Mohammed bin Salman has somewhat distanced himself from these groups, but in any case, that's the reality. So they've funded all these terror groups, and then when the Saudis and the Emiratis suddenly turned against them, Iran saved it. Iran saved Qatar. And Iran didn't get any concessions. They didn't tell them that you have to give this much gas to us, or you have to give it. And they just said, okay, you can fly through our territory. And then these ungrateful people, the regime they, after they were no longer in danger, they went back into the arms of their overlords in Washington. So if we hadn't had this war, Iran never showed any ambition of taking the Strait of Hormuz. But after what they've done, after all the murder and death and destruction and the slaughter of the kids on the first day, obviously the Iranians are going to have a different set of expectations.
And do you think they might rethink their security deals with the United States, given for the first time, perhaps they are realizing, probably, I hope so, that the security deals with the United States is costing them a lot?
They may not even be around to rethink. Who knows what's going to happen? Because let's say the critical infrastructure of these regimes are destroyed. Will they be able to control the people? I mean, the Emirates, 1 million citizens, 8 or 9 million foreigners. Will they be able to control the people in the country? Will the Qataris be able to do that? Will the Kuwaitis be able to do that? The regimes. Will Bahrain be able to do that? Will Saudi Arabia be able to do that? It's not even clear if they'll be in power because we're at a very sensitive moment. The war so far has had limited destruction. And despite that, the impact on the global economy is going to be very devastating. It's very bad, but it's going to be devastating. But if there's escalation, then global economic depression is a certainty. If it escalates, then all those tankers will be destroyed. The oil and gas installations will be destroyed. Right now, they're bombing Tehran. I don't know if you can hear. So with that happening, will these regimes survive? I don't think so. And if they do, obviously Iran is not going to tolerate them being a platform ever again because we've suffered so much at their hands. We didn't carry out this aggression. We didn't start the war with Saddam Hussein. We weren't in Syria. They began destroying Syria with ISIS and Al Qaeda. We went to stop these extremist groups. They killed our people in the 1980s, then later. They helped the US in the 12-day war. It's Iran that has the grievances, and Iran is now saying enough is enough. Either you behave like normal countries, or you're in trouble. Iran has no problem with them having excellent relations with Europe and the United States, but it's not going to accept them being a platform for aggression anymore.
Aren't you saying, Professor Marandi, that the project of breaking up Iran, the project that was started and this war was meant to be that, might end up breaking up or an uprising against the governments in the Persian Gulf? Aren't you saying that?
Yes, yes. Iran is not going to break up. Iran will emerge stronger, even though it's being hit and damaged, and the economy is being hit, and the Americans are bombing hospitals and schools. They bombed a university, a major university in Tehran last night, and the day before, a major university in Isfahan. They're striking universities. They bomb schools. They slaughter children. So of course we're being hurt. They bomb hospitals, ambulances. They are, this is the Epstein coalition. That is what they do. And they seem to have a thing for kids. As we see in Lebanon too, the slaughter of journalists in Beirut, in Lebanon, the slaughter of medics. For the West, this is like normal stuff. The mask of human rights and all that, they've thrown that away 2.5 years ago. Europe and North America, for them, it's the law of the jungle. And with that policy, the Iranians have no option but to resist. It is a war of for us survival. It's an existential war. And despite the hurt, we will emerge stronger. But our antagonists, they will either be destroyed by their own actions through the economic crisis that they will bring about upon themselves, or through the destruction that is caused by them hosting Iran's enemies. They will lead to they'll be weakened or they'll be destroyed. Europe is going to be far weaker. Europe is in crisis right now. No oil, no great shortage of oil, prices going up, natural gas, the same. War in Ukraine. They're all going to be hurt. The United States is going to be hurt. But these Arab regimes in the Persian Gulf, they're going to be hurt the most. So Iran will emerge stronger. Iran's antagonists will be weaker. Even though it will be there are dark days ahead. It's almost inevitable that the United States will attack Iran and try to invade the country or parts of the country in the coming hours or coming days. But they will fail. It'll just make things worse. But as I said, Trump, he wants an off-ramp. He's seeking an exit route, but Israel won't and Zion won't allow it for now.
And there would be increasingly greater pressures on the Persian Gulf states as the time would go on, for its population would see that their government is supporting the Zionist entity against a fellow Muslim nation, isn't it?
Oh, yes. I mean, if you look across the Arab world, people don't have sympathy for these regimes. If you look at the comment section in let's say Al Jazeera and so on, there's no sympathy for them because they know they're not representative of Arabs or Muslims or anything or human beings. They've worked very hard, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and others, to demonize Iran for 47 years. Sectarianism, slander, sectarian lies, racism. They've used everything in the book. Everything. But people have now see through it. They see through that. They see that these are proxies of the United States. They will never do anything for Palestine. The Emiratis are allies of the Israeli regime. And the Iranians and the Axis of Resistance are the only entities that care for the Palestinian people among nations, among governments. So they have no sympathy. They're despised. But it's not just Muslims. I mean, look at India. Zionists, by bringing about this war and preventing Trump from exiting, they're harming the Indian economy. Do you think the Zionists care? Of course not. They don't care for a moment about what's befalling the Indian economy, or the Brazilian economy, or the Mexican economy, or any economy. Well, the Mexicans, since they export oil, they're benefiting at least at one level. But they don't care about the global economy. They only care about Zionism and their own ethno-supremacist uh, group of people. That's it. So these regimes are despised not just by Muslims, but by Arabs, of course, whether they're Muslim or not, and by people across the world. I have not seen anywhere except for in these mainstream media outlets and among like people in the mainstream in the West. I don't see any sympathy for them anywhere. I see governments like siding with them because the United States holds a gun to their head, or because they're hopeful that they can get some money from these governments. But that's not going to last very long because they're not making any money anymore. In order to pay for their expenses, they're selling gold right now because the Americans apparently won't let them sell their stocks or their uh, uh, or stocks or treasuries or bonds, sorry. And but ultimately they're going to have to do that. And that's going to hurt the economy by the way. So, all of their excess money goes into US stocks and bonds and buying US weapons that they don't never know how to use. They've never been able to use properly. I digress. The point is that except for these mainstream media outlets and a certain class of people don't have any sympathy for them, especially the Emiratis.
Talking about regime standing on fragile foundation, I wanted to ask you about Syria, given, as the mainstream media would call it, the conclusion of the civil war. Um, it's hard to think that everything is silent in Syria, as it is reported sometimes, because many fought the Takfiri forces for decade and more than that on the side of the Assad government. And if things get worse in Iraq, as we are seeing signs of that, I can imagine people fighting for the Assad government for decades might cross over to Iraq and start fighting the US and their allies there, isn't it?
I think that the Al-Qaeda government, Jolani, and the ISIS groups, they will never fight against the United States. They are, unless there's a breakup of the command and control, the people at the top, unless they no longer have control over them. So Jolani was being encouraged to actually help Israel, and he was contemplating it, and they were moving troops towards the Lebanese border until the resistance in Iraq and Iran, the Iranian government threatened them. Iran was threatened them with missile strikes and drone strikes, and Iraq said they'll move into Syria if they help the Israelis. And in general, the behavior of this Al-Qaeda government and the Jolani regime, their behavior has vindicated Iran and the resistance. Those who are saying that this is sectarian everything has been exposed. The only country and the only groups that are supporting the Sunni Palestinians is the Axis of Resistance. just like it was in Bosnia when Bosnia was being destroyed. It was Iran. So people are now seeing that Jolani does nothing for the Palestinians, and he's actually a threat to Hezbollah. So these events have actually woken many people up. Many people who supported this dirty war, whereas you pointed the Western media, let's call it the civil war, right? Those who supported the dirty war, it's now become clear that either they were mistaken or that they were themselves proxies. But they were working for they were effectively pursuing Israeli and US policy. They're helping them. So in that respect, Iran has been vindicated, but Syria is in no position. I mean, these terrorist groups, I don't believe that they're ever going to do anything. I mean, they're Takfiris. They don't, nothing good ever comes from Takfiri ideology. So I don't see them going into Iraq to target the Americans. They may try to go into Iraq to do what they used to do, kill people. I mean, Jolani used to plant bombs on the streets of Baghdad and slaughter innocent civilians. That's what his job was, to create chaos. They attempt that, but the Iraqi resistance is much stronger than that. So if they do move in that direction, they will be on the losing end.
Yeah, I was thinking more about the opposition to Jolani forces who
Oh,
had
okay.
fought. Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
was
I think
thinking
that.
about an
Yeah, I think
uprising
that.
in Syria and then opposition forces moving in and joining the resistance, which hasn't happened so far.
Yeah, yeah, I don't think it's a priority now for anyone. But as the empire weakens, as these dictatorships in the Persian Gulf that fund Takfiri ideology, and sadly, Turkey, under Erdogan plays a key role in this horrific uh, rise of this sinister uh, groups of people, these sinister groups of people. I think that as the money runs out, we're already seeing, for example, in Sudan, the terror campaign that was funded by the Emiratis is collapsing because the Emiratis don't have that sort of money to hand out to these groups. So I think the fact that this oil and gas wealth that has been at the service of empire all these decades, as it is lessened and gradually depleted, that itself will be good news for people across the region and beyond.
I want to end by asking you a little bit about Israel itself, the Zionist entity, or the giant American military outpost, as people might like to think about what it is. Um, uh, Iranian missiles and drones are falling in northern Israel. Hezbollah is firing rockets, which are falling there. There's a lot of censorship, but if you read through the lines, then you get enough evidence about it. And now Ansar Allah is attacking southern Israel. Um, so much so that top military officials from Israel, Yal Zamir, criticized the government for being stretched out and not preparing the troops. How dangerous is this situation for the Zionist entity itself, particularly if opinions in the United States force Trump to cry louder for an off ramp? Could there a regime change in Israel, or could Israel break up?
I don't know how this will end. I think ultimately this war will end with a very different world, probably. If it expands, I think life across the world will change and people will be much more impoverished. And you and I will probably have very different lifestyles, just like everyone else. And many people will go hungry, and many people, tens, if not hundreds of millions of people, will be on the move, and they'll probably move towards the places that traditionally they go to, Europe and North America, but there will be collapse there as well. So, if this war reaches the point where the oil and gas assets in the Persian Gulf are destroyed and the tankers and all that, then that's where we're going. But I think that ultimately the war will end, and Israel will probably exist after the war, but I think it will be a diminished entity. And a lot of people, they will no longer have support. People across the world right now know that their difficulties are being brought about by the Israeli regime. And as things get worse, people will war with the Israeli regime. And so it will be diminished. It will have no support. And I think many Zionists will be disillusioned. I just think it will ultimately, at some point down the road, it will collapse, or there will be civil war. I don't see a good future for Zionism, and I think that many young Jews who are at the forefront of the resistance against Zionism, because now some say that the majority of very young Jews actually see themselves as anti-Zionist, which is a very good thing because Judaism is not the same as Zionism. And many of my friends, many of my Jewish friends, religious and not so religious, they're anti-Zionist. All my Jewish friends are anti-Zionist. Just like Christians, that it's Zionism is not all Christians are Zionists. Increasingly, it's the numbers are dwindling. The Zionist Christians who believe that Christ supports genocide or claim that Christ supports genocide, just like Muslims are distancing themselves from Takfiri ideology like ISIS and Al Qaeda. And we're seeing people very unhappy about the role that the Jolani regime is playing. So I don't see a good future for the Israeli regime. Iran has always believed in the one state solution where everyone has equal status as Muslims, Christians, and Jews. We have Jews in Iran. We have synagogues. We have kosher restaurants, and we have a Jewish member of parliament. And that basically is the only way forward. It's quite extraordinary how the West and Western journalists and Western elites, over the years, whenever I would say you support ethno supremacism in Palestine, they just immediately change the subject. That's how it's always been in my interaction with Western journalists from the mainstream media or Western MPs from Western countries. As soon as you talk about racism and ethno supremacism, they just change the subject. They won't go into it. But now it's being forced upon them because their own people, especially the youth, see the reality. And as the misery of the world increases because of this foolish war, everyone will know who to blame. It will be Zionism, Netanyahu, and Trump.
And Palestine would be free. Um,
Hopefully, for Jews, Christians, and Muslims, and whoever else lives there.
Absolutely.
Hopefully, inshallah.
We'll leave it there, Professor Marandi. Thank you so much for joining, and wish you safety and all the best.
Thank you very much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Hi, my name is Ayushman. I, along with Jyotisman, have started this platform. In the last 2 years, we have tried to build content for the left and progressive forces. We have interviewed economists, historians, political commentators, and activists so far. If you have liked our content so far and want us to build an archive for the left, I have two requests for you. Please do consider donating for the cause. Link is in the description below. Also, if you are not able to do so, don't feel sad. You can always like our videos and share our videos to your comrades. Finally, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.